You are live and unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight in person and online. We have a nice agenda, very interesting agenda. And my name is Katie Bordenaro. I'm vice chair of the committee. Eugene, you chair is not here tonight, so I will be presiding. We have a number of people in the room that should say hello. Down here with Frederica.
Frederica Siegel, member.
Susan Wittenberg, member.
Anita Brand, board member.
Laura Gabono, board member, committee member.
Sean Sweeney, board member, committee member.
Carter Booth, board member and committee member.
Valerie De La Rosa, board chair.
Not the board member. Not member.
Board member. But not committee, just visiting. So nice of you to. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is a presentation by Village Preservation of their report on the Chinatown Rezoning. And there are hard copies in the room. I think that a link might have been sent out as well. And we're very pleased that Andrew Berman was able to join us. And I don't know if he needs any introduction to this group, but Andrew is the executive director of Village Preservation, which shortened his name just after I got all the initials for their prior name in the right order and consistently. But this is the, Andrew heads up the group, which, helps protect the landmarking in our community board. And we're very appreciative of that. So nice to see you, Andrew, as always. And I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Also joining me is Juan Rivero. I don't know if who worked on this report as well. I don't know if he's been promoted to panelist yet or if he's in there. Should I share my screen now so that I can kind of go through the presentation?
Mark says yes. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. That didn't seem to work. Let me try that.
Please, you can take a seat.
Sign it.
Hi, thank you.
Is everybody seeing my screen now? My screen share?
Yes, thank you. We can see it in the room.
Excellent. Well, so again, thank you everybody so much for inviting us in to do this. As I think everybody there knows, Village Preservation, like the community board, like many people in the community, were very, very engaged around the SoHo, NoHo, and Chinatown rezoning. It did include part of Chinatown. And, part of that engagement was around a lot of the promises and predictions that were made as a part of the rezoning proposal, many of which we, and I think many others, were very skeptical of in terms of whether or not they would lead to the outcomes that were promised. So earlier this year in May, as you can see from the report cover here, we issued a report when we were at the 1/3 mark of the 10-year period for which the city had made predictions about what the results would be from the rezoning. It was kind of a nice round point at which we could kind of calibrate and evaluate where we were in relation to those predictions. It's now almost the end of 2025, so we're actually really at the 40% mark. So I've updated 40% points. So I've updated some of the numbers for this presentation to reflect that, as well as to include some information that's come to light in the weeks and months since we issued this report in May, much of which has actually come to light through the community board process. So I think it will be of some level of familiarity to many community board members. I do want to point out that our report and analysis really looks at new construction and predictions around housing and affordability. It does not look at many of the other very important elements of the rezoning, such as retail, the arts fund, conversion fees, etc. Those are very, very important, and I would encourage the community board to seek information about how outcomes are conforming with what was promised and predicted there, but that's not information that we have. So I'll just sort of stipulate that up front. Within that context, so we're looking at the promises and the predictions of the SoHo NoHo rezoning, which was passed in December of 2021. So one of the, as I'm sure we all remember, one of the biggest promises and rationales for the rezoning was that the city said that there was not enough housing that was being produced in the rezoning area and that it needed to change the zoning regulations to stimulate the production of more housing. And it predicted that in 10 years, the rezoning would result in the production of 1,829 units of new housing. Now we're at just about the 40% mark, so that should mean roughly 732 units of new housing being produced. There has, in fact, been exactly 0 new units of housing produced in the rezoning area since the rezoning has taken place, at least that we are aware of, and we've pretty, I think, extensively and exhaustively searched city files. Now, there's a variety of projects that have been discussed, publicized, gone through some form of, sort of public evaluation, but none that are even largely close enough to complete to even say for sure that they actually will be built. I have no doubt at some point there will be some housing built as a result of this, but 40% of the way into this 10-year prediction period, 0 units of housing have been produced so far. It's important to note this in contrast to what happened prior to the rezoning. So in the 4 or so years, we're now four years out, in the 4 or so years preceding the rezoning, we've been able to identify over a dozen new residential developments which took place in the rezoning area containing hundreds of units of housing. This is important to point out because, of course, the city's argument was, we're not building enough housing here. The existing regulatory regimes don't allow housing to be built. In fact, a quite considerable amount of housing was being built in the rezoning area prior to the rezoning. And one of the other arguments we heard was that in historic districts in general, and in particular in this historic district, it's especially hard to create new housing. Now, this, by the way, is only new construction. The single largest source of housing within the rezoning area in SoHo and NoHo is, of course, conversions of non-residential buildings, typically commercial or industrial, to residential use. But by far, most of this new construction that you see here that took place in the couple of years before the rezoning, with I think maybe one or exception, is all within the designated historic districts. Also, to put this in context, we're not seeing a lack of housing being built in the SoHo NoHo area because housing is not being built in New York City. During the past 4 years, housing production in New York City has reached highs not seen in decades, with 38,000 units produced citywide in 2024. This is a report put forward. This is from a report put forward by the New York State Comptroller's Office. As you can see, the rate of housing production in the city has been actually exceedingly robust in these last 4 years here since the SoHo NoHo rezoning has passed. So the lack of housing production in SoHo and NoHo is not because of any kind of citywide conditions that it's merely suffering from or reflecting. So the next prediction was that within 10 years, within the 10-year study period, the rezoning would produce between 382 and 575 units of affordable housing. At the 40% mark, that should mean something in the neighborhood of between 153 to 230 units of affordable housing would have been produced by now. Of course, the number of units it has produced so far is exactly 0. Another promise, I think, very much related to this, which we raised extensively throughout the process, was that the city asserted that no existing rent-regulated affordable housing would be destroyed to make way for new development that is enabled by the rezoning. In fact, we've documented in 2 cases 8 units of affordable housing that have been destroyed or removed from rent regulation to make way for new development. And this is by no means an exhaustive cataloging of all rent-regulated housing in the rezoning area, which may have been lost in the last 4 years. These happen to be 2 examples that we have been able to document and uncover. I wish we had a way of exhaustively tracking and cataloging all of that. So there may well be considerably more than this. These just happen to be the 2 that we are aware of. 32 Thompson Street, which was demolished to make way for new development, which is planned but has not taken place under the new zoning. There were 5 known units of rent-regulated housing there, and 43 Bleecker, which has come before the community board. 3 known units of rent-regulated housing were eliminated to make way for a residential conversion, which is allowed by the new zoning. So this means that at this point, the rezoning has actually destroyed more affordable housing than it has produced, which certainly runs quite contrary to the picture that was painted when we went through the review process. So another promise which was made during the rezoning process was that all new housing development would include some affordable housing within it. Now, we've already documented multiple cases of new developments allowed by the rezoning, all ones which under the previous zoning would not have been allowed as of right, which have 0 affordable housing attached to them. This one here, 40 Worcester Street, according to published reports, it's a 6-story commercial building, which is going to be converted into a 4-unit residential project consisting of full floor and duplex luxury apartments, including one with its own private pool. And this conversion would not have been possible without the rezoning. None of the units will be affordable. The project's ground floor retail space, which the new zoning requires, leaves the new floor area for the project just shy of the 12,500 square feet of residential space that trigger the affordability requirements. By the way, we repeatedly pointed this out during the rezoning process, and the city just refused to engage, refused to acknowledge that this was an issue. So that is one example. Another example is 142 Green Street, which is to be converted to a single-family mansion with no affordable housing component whatsoever. The building once contained multiple joint live-work quarters for artists. And again, just to be clear, under the old zoning, this was not something that you would have been able to have done as of right. And then 43 Bleecker, it's kind of a twofer. In addition to eliminating the previously existing units of rent-regulated housing, it will have no on-site affordable housing and will instead choose to pay into a fund that has not yet been established and has never produced a single unit of affordable housing, instead of having to provide any actual affordable housing either on-site or off. Now, this was an issue that we and others raised during the rezoning process with the city. They said that while it was technically possible that somebody could do this, it would never happen. Of course, it is in fact now happening. So another promise that was made was that in all new housing developments, affordable housing will be completely integrated within the market rate development, with the market rate housing within the new development. I think it was in September, at, I believe, this committee, we saw the first case of a planned, what could be called poor building, not poor door, but poor building, wherein the required affordable housing units are completely segregated from the market rate units within a separate building. We've checked. This is allowable under the rezoning. The city had told us at the time, much like in the previous case, that while this was technically possible, it would never happen. Of course, it is in fact now happening. These are the renderings that were presented to the community board for the buildings in question, 285 Hudson Street and 30 Thompson Street, which will be affordable, but will be enabling an off-site market rate building within which the affordable units will not be located. So far, the only two completed developments under the rezoning have both been for commercial office use. At the lower left, the commercial office tower at 360 Bowery, which is corporate offices for Giovanni, I believe, and the luxury office and retail development at 430 West Broadway, which is on the lower right. And it should be noted that the city predicted that residential development, including affordable housing, would take place at 360 Bowery, the office tower, and that no development would occur at 430 West Broadway. The city, in its analysis, said this is not a development site. We're not going to see anything built or change here. So these vast discrepancies between what we're seeing happening and what we were told would happen is really not unusual or surprising. This is a study that we released just before the rezoning vote, where we conducted an analysis and did a review of multiple rezonings that had taken place over the last several years throughout. And it showed that the Department of City Planning's predictions about rezoning outcomes are almost always tremendously inaccurate, with the amounts or levels of housing, commercial development, or affordable housing development typically off by huge degrees from what's forecast. And just to provide some relatively nearby examples, the Hudson Square rezoning, which borders the SoHo NoHo rezoning, about 4 times as much commercial space as predicted, but only half the amount of housing that was predicted. So there, when we went through the process, we were told this is what you can expect in terms of how much office space is going to be built. This is what you can expect in terms of how much housing is going to result from this. So the commercial space ended up being 4 times as much. The housing ended up being half as much. Also nearby, the East Village Lower East Side rezoning produced only 18% of the predicted housing during its 10-year study period. And it's important to point out that the level of inaccuracy and discrepancy here may get even worse if NYU's legal challenge to the provision in the rezoning, which was added by the City Council, which prohibits most private university uses, is successful. So as you may recall, when the rezoning was passed by the City Planning Commission, it included a new allowance, which the old zoning did not contain, for private university expansion. But the Department of City Planning, the City Planning Commission said, well, it'll be allowed, but we don't see it ever actually happening. So their predictions of new development showed no private university expansion within the rezoning area, even though they allowed it. We raised alarm bells about this, as did others. When the rezoning went through the City Council, the City Council added in a provision that said that basically most private university uses would not be allowed within the rezoning area, which is similar to what the old zoning had. Well, NYU is now suing, claiming that what the City Council did was unconstitutional. And if they are successful, those uses will then again be allowed within the rezoning area. And so not only will the resulting development deviate significantly, even more significantly, from what was predicted by the city, but keep in mind all of those private university developments are exempted from any kind of affordable housing requirements. So it will further damage the supposed rationale, and we would argue the one good thing that could come out of this, which is some new affordable housing, be even less likely if this is successful. But it is worth noting that even if the predicted housing development does eventually appear in the manner in which the city has predicted that it will still make these neighborhoods wealthier and more expensive than they were before the rezoning. And that's because the 70 to 80% of the new housing which would be produced would be market rate, which, based on what market rate housing in this area produced in recent years goes for, would be unaffordable to about 90% of current neighborhood residents. So 70 to 80% of those units in those new buildings would be occupied by people who are in the top 10% or probably even less of the income range for the neighborhood. The required 20 to 30% affordable housing, if and when it's ever built or included, would still be unaffordable to most of the poorest 20 to 30% neighborhood residents, because the quote unquote affordability levels are still, for the most part, significantly higher than the least well-off people who currently live in these neighborhoods. So we're not getting even what we were promised. And keep in mind that what we were promised will still make the neighborhood more wealthier and more unaffordable than it is now. So that is the presentation in summary. And I heard you say that you have copies of the report there as well. So a lot of this, pretty much all of this information should be within what you have there as well.
And Andrew, you did also send us a slide deck.
Yes.
Oh, just the report. You sent us a slide deck because it's a nice distillation of the report.
I'd be happy to send that to you as well.
Yeah, and nice highlights to remind people. Does anyone on the committee have a question for Andrew or?
You didn't talk about 277 Canal Street on Canal and Broadway. This was in Chinatown.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Nothing being built there. It's been.
Yeah, there's
The red building.
there's multiple sites where there has been discussion about new development. In one cases where it started, I believe some workers were killed due to what was deemed to be unsafe work, and so it stopped. So there's quite a few sites where there has been discussion of new construction taking place, but none have advanced in any significant enough way that at this point you could say this definitely will materialize and come to pass. And 277 Canal is one of them.
College, Andrew, is anyone looking at the retail arts fund or conversion fees? I mean, you've done a very deep dive. Is MAS looking at any of those, any other organization looking at those things?
Well, I've definitely heard about the retail issues from the Broadway Residents Coalition, and I think from others, so they may well have some information there. And I think the Coalition for Fairness in SoHo and NoHo has certainly done a lot of work around the artist fund and the conversion fee. So I would certainly talk to them. I think they are probably the best resource for those issues.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Fairness. Thank you. I know I can look at it again, but it's always good to have a note with your own handwriting.
Hey, Katie, can somebody promote Eddie? I think he has a question.
Eddie Siegel? Is that who you mean? Art?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We don't see him. Oh, there he is. Okay. He should be.
I just raised my hand in anticipation of possible discussion. I don't have any immediate question. I was just not promoted yet, so I was saying hi.
Well, welcome and thank you for joining. I'll add you to the list. Go ahead.
I have a quick question. Andrew, how do you think about the time bias in this, right? So I'm not sure how these projects get distributed over a 10-year period, but I'm guessing or assuming that like early on, it might take a little bit of time to get, the architects and the funding and the lawyers to get some of these projects off the ground, right? I think we're aware, you mentioned two of those projects that are, they're using the buildings offsite to be a part of a larger project on West Broadway, right? So some of these things, I'm assuming, take a little bit more time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and if the issue were that at the 40% mark, instead of 200 units of housing being built, only 150 were being built, I think we could all say, well, it'll all sort of shake out, at the end. But the differences are much, much, much more dramatic than that. I would also say, keep in mind that while the final approval for the rezoning came in December of 2021, it was first proposed in, I believe it was late 2019, it was pre-COVID. So what this rezoning would do, which was largely unchanged through the process, was out there for a very, very long time. And the de Blasio administration, under which it was passed, I think made it incredibly clear that they had every intention of doing this. So it's not like it was, December 2021 and all of a sudden, developers woke up and they were like, wow, there's this whole new world of possibilities that we never considered. This had been in process for a good 2 years before then. So, while it would be silly to, sort of niggle over, are they at exactly the 40% mark yet in the 10-year analysis? They're not only so far from those numbers, the dynamic of what we're seeing is so much different than what was predicted, in that there's so many examples of affordable housing being destroyed, projects moving forward that don't include any affordable housing, office development on sites where they said there was going to be residential development, et cetera, that it's very clear that this fits the same pattern as other rezonings, which is that the outcome is almost unrecognizably different from what was projected by the city as part of the public review process.
Yeah, and we've seen that in presentations from other people. I remember Frederica and Anita may remember, you brought the MAS in to take a deep dive into the rezoning of
Long Island City
Long Island.
and Brooklyn, the Fourth
Downtown.
Avenue area.
Yeah, and it was nothing, it was actually the opposite of what had been predicted or really planned for that happened in that area. And so these predictions are very, on very shaky ground. Oh, good, I was waiting for Susan. Hi, Susan.
Andrew, when the process of the SoHo NoHo rezoning was happening, we all felt at the time it would lead to what you're discussing today, including it was the beginning of the follow-up after we had smaller rezonings and other things which required community input. I mean, I think the SoHo NoHo rezoning was a sort of turning point when people felt like community input is meaningless. It's just for show, they're checking the boxes. And, so now we have the SoHo NoHo rezoning, the Hudson Square. And I remember with the presentation of some other rezonings around the city, which also were considered unsuccessful. I think maybe it was either downtown Brooklyn. But so what happened, what do we do now? I mean, what do we do now?
It's a great question. And let me also just say this. I mean, one might be tempted to say, well, predictions are always going to be not 100% accurate. Who can say for absolutely sure exactly what's going to happen? Their rate of accuracy is so low. The report we did, which I'm sure you saw, was titled "Less Reliable Than Flipping a Coin." You literally could flip a coin to try to have it tell you, is this going to be a development site or not under the rezoning? Will housing be built here or not under the rezoning? And you would have a higher rate of accuracy than the city's analysis and predictions. And as you pointed out, the way in which it deviates from what was promised, at least in this case, very much follows the line of what we, the community board, and others raised during the rezoning process, saying, look, if there's any kind of loophole that will allow developers to do X, build without affordable housing, not integrated into the building, pay into a fund instead of actually including it, they will do it. And that's what we're seeing actually playing out here. Now, in terms of what we do from here, I wish I had an easy answer. I think among the most important things is to keep a very, very careful scrutiny of whatever the city is proposing, and don't simply accept them at their word when they say, hey, this is what we're proposing and this is what it's going to do. Because we should know by now that it's not necessarily going to be what they say it's going to be. You know, the ballot measures that just passed, unfortunately, will exacerbate this problem considerably, because now the mayor has much more unilateral authority and ability to push these rezonings forward without them, in many cases, having to go through the city council or something, or being able to get around the city council. I think one of the most important things we can do, if nothing else, is that when the city says, we want this rezoning and it will produce X, Y, and Z, we make sure that we say, that's your prediction of what it will produce, and your track record on predicting this is terrible. So let's not use your prediction as the basis upon which we debate what this will or won't do.
Thank you.
Are we having a separate discussion, Katie? I have a question for the committee just for context and clarification. When we did the SoHo NoHo rezoning back in 2019, 2020, we part of that is saying what are the allowable uses of certain lots of certain areas. During that process, is it possible to make recommendations about the specific types of zoning that are, let's say, more preferable or only allowing housing? How did that work, or how was that decision made?
There was extensive discussion about that, and the city was non-responsive.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was a dialogue.
Yeah, it wasn't really a dialogue. It was like, here's what we're doing. And there's one of the things which they had raised, which was a basis for a lot of justification, was that this was an incredibly important commercial corridor. And a result, any leaning toward housing was significantly reduced, as well as, the ground floor uses being expanded. And so you ended up with a matrix that was, not dissimilar to other areas where the outcome is not, I think what Andrew was pointing out to, is not what people want to see. And that was raised. It was very clear that in this area, that would probably be one of the consequences. And you can just look to Hudson Square to see the same situation, and I've raised that a number of times, but that's a great failure, for our community as far as the production of housing. Instead, we have, corporate headquarters.
And
Midtown.
And just to build on that, Arturo, I mean, one of the things, and we were texting a little bit about this today, one of the things that we're asking for is for the city to study Hudson Square, SoHo NoHo rezoning, in the same way that Andrew has studied it, not trying to woo us for a vote, but to, do a more analytical approach, because we haven't had that yet from the city.
And
Valerie, want to jump in?
yeah, and I think for the most part, most of the commentary from both this committee and at full board on SoHo is on our YouTube channel, right?
It must be if we were doing that in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything was remote for a good part of it.
It's referable, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We had very large in-person group meetings.
Very large.
We had the
It's before
first
COVID,
one.
yeah.
It's 2019.
We
Yeah,
had a very.
Right, that one at
Yeah,
the school
very big,
was
right.
not on there, but.
up until, the world.
City planning was stunned that residents showed up. They didn't know 100 people could show up at a SoHo meeting on something seemingly so unimportant at the
Yeah.
time.
Even at an inconvenient location.
Yeah, Chinatown.
Yeah, no, it was, the community came out and gave its opinion. Frederica, no? This is a public hearing, so we have a number of guests in the room. So I don't know if sorry, I have my back to you. But are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so given.
Can you just give your name for the?
Phyllis.
Well, you're gonna need, sorry, we're gonna have comments that people can't hear, so if you could come sit to testify, that would be helpful for everyone and state your name.
Not testifying. attached. All right, so a follow-up on what can we do, given the mayor-elect making affordable housing a top priority, and given that city planning is a mayoral agency, are there recommendations that can be made, explicit recommendations to compel or to suggest ways in which the future predictions might be accurate? That's my question.
Can I make a quick comment about that? Part of the city's sort of rebuttal on that is the environmental review process does have certain requirements in terms of how certain sorts of analyses are done. It's highly, highly flawed, but there are elements of it that they are tied into, and some of that very official analysis that they have to do and have to include as part of the application process is tied to that. That said, there is nothing stopping the city from saying, well, via the standard EIS, we find that we predict A, B, and C happening, but based upon our experience, knowledge, et cetera, and what we think is a better, higher, more accurate criteria, we think that X, Y, and Z will happen. So don't give them the excuse to say, well, we have this sort of legally required analysis that we have to do, and it is what it is. They do have to do it, but there's nothing stopping them from doing additional better analysis that is not limited to what the legally required analysis makes them do.
May I follow up? Are you saying that the official process is such that that it is inherently biased? Because what you're talking about are predictions that are worse than half wrong.
Well, what I am saying is they have these criteria for evaluation that I think are highly flawed. They consider something a development site if and only if there's only a certain amount of FAR available. They say that if a building has rent-regulated units in it, they cannot consider it a development site because the rent-regulated units will protect the building from being developed, which we all know is BS, but it's what the sort of standard criteria that they use lays out for them. So even if the law requires them to use those factors as the basis for that legally required analysis that they have to do, there is nothing stopping them from doing an additional layer of analysis that they can share with us that looks past some of those flawed criteria that they may be wedded to, but that we've all learned from experience are not at all accurate predictors.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any more questions in the room? There are, okay, just.
Frame something first.
Oh, just hold on and then we'll get to you.
Is that the rezoning of SoHo and NoHo
Be sure he's talking into the microphone. Bill.
followed a community engagement process, which was separate. And that was the Envision SoHo NoHo community planning. I forget exactly what it was called. And then there was a report that was released. And it was not until some period later that the city decided that they wanted to engage in the rezoning. And if you go back to the date of that meeting, and if you watch it, there was some verbal, discussion that just for justification of the rezoning, which were not written. But watching that meeting, I think that you can see some of the disconnect. And that, Arturo, goes to answering your question, that the Envision report has a lot of the feedback from the community on what they wanted to see. And I think that there was some disconnect in what was presented by the city. So there were two different processes that occurred. And I think everybody here was lumping them together. So I just wanted to be clear about that, because there wasn't much responsiveness from the city after the rezoning was announced. But there was an engagement process prior to that where many opinions were shared.
That's correct. It was not responded to.
And few
It was already set in stone before.
Right.
Worked our little hearts out.
Right.
And that was done very close to the beginning of the pandemic.
Yep.
And there's forecasting done then. That was crazy, because of all of the upheaval. And as a result, I think that many things were not properly taken into account by the city.
Thank you, Carter. Pete Davies, I see your hand up, but there are two people in the room. If you want to come, please come up because you need to be near the microphone, both for the people at home and also for the recording.
Get to sit even?
Yes.
Amazing, fancy. Hi, my name is Elias Schultz. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I guess I'm wondering, this community board district obviously has like a really high density of historic preservation districts, many of which I love and enjoy every day. And this report seems to be the result of like lots of organized audit planning and auditing. And I guess I wanted to know if you're concerned at all that this really high level of opposition and auditing of city activity in this district specifically kind of pushes development out onto other communities that have less resources to be so organized in opposition.
Well,
We're in a post.
I guess my question is more for Mr. Berman than for the community.
well, you're really supposed to address to us and
Oh,
we can
sorry about
answer if
that.
we like. So Frederica, please.
Let's have Andrew sign that. Field that question.
I can quickly respond by simply saying that I don't see how an accurate analysis of what the rezoning has done or not done, lived up to its promises or not lived up to its promises, does anything but good in terms of providing accurate information. That report that I referred back to, the one about flipping the coin, looked at rezonings throughout the city, not just in this neighborhood, and how woefully inaccurate the predictions were in those cases. And those were rezonings in the South Bronx, East New York, and other neighborhoods throughout the city. So we're all suffering from the same problem. And I think the more that we can do to highlight this issue, the better off everybody in the city will be.
And I think also in response to the question, this committee worked very hard on both the Hudson Square rezoning where we wanted housing and didn't get it. And that was not what we envisioned. We had a working group under David Gruber's chairmanship. And then right next to it, the Google project, where we also worked extremely hard, the St. John's terminal, to include hundreds of units of housing that was ripped away from us and made into Google. We have looked for places where housing can go and where we think it'll work. And then it's taken away from above. So we think that we're doing the right thing here. But the fellow next to you also wanted, you have to come up though. so you can
Katie,
also-
can I also make a comment on that? I think I do appreciate collecting data on this. So I thank Andrew and his team for doing the good community work of collecting data so we have facts for this. But I think the other part, and maybe a follow-up to the gentleman's question, is it would be good to communicate or have a city agency like the DCP or DOB also as a part of this conversation in the future to get their perspective on why their predictions are so bad, or if there's something in the future that we're missing. I'd love to understand that too.
Yeah.
Arturo, we've asked them multiple times and they won't do it. We've asked them to undergo that process and to review the rezonings, and they won't do it, and they won't respond to us.
Yeah, we asked them last year.
So, I
Yes,
mean, you make it sound like nobody's ever asked
Yeah,
this,
like we
and this
didn't-
is.
That's not what I was
ongoing.
trying to, no, that's not what I was trying to say. I'd love to hear from them. And if we can get it on the record that they're refusing to come to the committee meeting, I'd also love to. have a
Arturo,
record of
that was, I'm sorry, but that was a part of the process that we asked after the Tale of Two Rezonings presentation from the MAS, we asked city planning about that and they wouldn't engage. with
Okay, I
us.
wasn't aware of that. ask.
Well, yeah, but they wouldn't
Yeah.
engage in that process because the cities, I don't think, they will tell you to wait 10 years. And then come back to discuss it. It's just, it all seems to make sense, but that unfortunately on the ground isn't the way the city engages in this process. And they're not interested in the back and forth. And that you can go back to the public meetings and look at the Q&A throughout the whole rezoning process, and you will see that. That there isn't, and you can go back and you can see the Envision SoHo NoHo report that came out of the community engagement process, which was separate, and to see how much community engagement there was. I think there were 20 meetings, public meetings. So it's a pretty extensive process, but they're not interested in engaging and looking at any attribution in any of the previous rezonings. And it's only outside groups that are doing that.
All over the.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
we
just-
do
I
have
think
someone
for-
who's waiting to talk. Can we get
Okay.
back?
No, all I was gonna say was just, in terms of next steps, if it's already been done, fine, but I would hate for this report to be, written and we aren't taking any next steps or as an action, so.
Can I say something?
Well, let's
Yes.
send them a letter. Let's do it again.
I can't be the only one at the table who's got a little PTSD on this topic.
Yes, you are not alone. I know that.
Or why is David sharing a screen?
But,
Could someone kind of fix that?
but all of the historic districts that you were enjoying were very complicating, right? That there was a lot, just vast areas that were off the table. This committee is not against
Or if you want to make me a co-host.
affordable housing development, but we are tired of luxury housing development. And we knew that was what was going to be produced.
Can you make me a co-host?
Hey, David, can you stop
Can
sharing
you
your
make me a
screen?
co-host?
David, you're sharing your screen
Just so I could
with everybody.
maybe just turn that feature off or something. This is just, sorry, I'm sorry, this can turn into some sort of record of something we don't see on screen. So.
David's looking very innocent over there.
He doesn't know what's happening.
No, I'm having a bit of trouble with my computer, actually.
Just go to the bottom of your Zoom screen where it says share and just click stop share.
Actually, I think it's the top.
Well, you can do, you just need to.
Can you do it?
I can't do it.
Okay, thanks, Valerie. Yes, Anita. I'm sorry. Are you okay to wait?
I'm happy to wait.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to say that it was my impression that while the city was required to have hearings and meet with the community board, let me just say the community,
Yeah.
I felt that at no time were they really planning to alter anything about what they had started with. And that was to make sure that, there was luxury development. We're going to get exactly what they intended, whether or not it was predicted that way or presented that way. And I don't think that there was any intention of modifying it. It was an obligation that they had to listen and attend, but there was really no reflection of very good ideas.
Yeah, no.
Very thoughtful, carefully considered, with a lot of experienced people, and it was ignored.
Can I speak? I recall the genesis of this. People on Broadway were complaining that stores greater than 10,000 square feet, which was for that era.
Required a special permit.
Yeah, and big stores were put in 20,000, 50,000 square feet. So we asked the city, the borough president to do something about it, and she asked DOB to stop this kind of illegal activity, and they ignored it. So they wanted to do a study, and then from there, in order just to retain commercialism, it's all of a sudden affordable housing came in the middle of it. I think the housing part came in because there was concern that people were moving into jointly work quarters for artists and didn't have the certification. And some of the artists were complaining. So it started innocently.
But we didn't get the affordable, we're not getting the affordable housing. Okay, I don't want to make.
No, it's fine.
Please state your name.
Hello, my name is Asher Lasday. I just had a question specifically for, I guess, mostly Andrew. But as you said, anyone can feel free to respond on the production of housing in the 4 years prior to, and then the 4 years post the rezoning. Because you're right, your point is that there was less production of housing, ignore affordable versus luxury for a moment. There's less housing post zoning than pre-zoning, but then you didn't really explain, or if you did, maybe I missed it, sorry, what the mechanism would be for how a zoning would decrease the amount of housing production. And just off the top of my head, I mean, we are talking about right before 2021 when rates were incredibly low, close to zero. And then after when rates, went pretty quickly to about 5%. I wonder to what extent that's really a fair apples to apples comparison when there's like a huge difference in, basically the inputs to the price of what housing costs to build. Sorry, I'm happy to clarify if you want.
No, I heard you loud and clear. So, a couple of things. One is, again, if you look at what happened citywide over those 4 years, you actually saw a pretty significant increase in the amount of new housing being constructed overall, just not in SoHo and NoHo. In the 4 years prior to the rezoning, there was actually a considerable amount of housing that was being built in this area through what the city described as these incredibly onerous mechanisms that nobody could navigate. And yet somehow they seem to produce a lot more housing. How or why the new zoning might be preventing new housing from being built, I don't know. Eventually, there's clearly going to be housing built under the new zoning. But what I think is very clear is that this shows that it was inaccurate to say that there was no housing being built beforehand. The city could have required affordable housing requirements to the existing zoning, made it as of right, and added an affordability requirement, which is what we had urged them to do. Instead, they did this huge increase in the allowable density for both commercial and for housing. So far, it's only produced commercial. And even though the rest of the city has been able to produce significant amounts of housing, regardless of what's going on with the interest rates or whatever else, it hasn't done it here. So I think it shows that the rezoning did not have the effects that the city said that it would in terms of both stimulating housing production and the kind of housing production that they said, which was housing that would always include affordability on-site, integrated within new developments.
And I would just build on that, Andrew, and then we'll go to Pete and then we'll go to Eddie. I mean, and I mentioned this earlier, this is what we saw in Hudson Square as well, that the commercial development has gone full bore ahead. We've got Disney with a full block. We've got Google with a mega block. And housing, and we were supposed to have housing at Duarte Square, and that's been taken over and into the commercial column as well. Even though there was a school that was going to be built to provide, seats for those kids, and we worked on that for a long time.
That's the carrot that led us along.
Yeah, so we do see the commercials is trumping in the area overall. Pete Davies has had his hand up for a long time, and so we'll go to him, and then Eddie, I see your hand. Don't worry, you'll be next. Pete, is Pete elevated?
Just allow him to speak usually.
Mark's not.
I have a feeling that if I did ask Mark, so why don't I just do it? Yeah, I'll just do it.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's been assigned here to do that on the committee, it seems like.
Happy to do it if you want.
So maybe somebody should.
I can do it if you make me a co-host.
Okay,
Is somebody doing it?
I just allowed him to talk. I can't make a co-host. I'm a co-host. I can't make anyone else a co-host. Continue.
Can you hear me?
hi Pete, yes, we can.
Good, thank you very much. Couple of things. If you all go to the famous New York City rezoning commitments tracker from the office of the mayor, that which shows what Vicky Bean and Corey Johnson and Margaret Chin put together for us back in 2021, you'll see they've just not done it. They have not fulfilled their commitments. So, and that has to do with housing. For example, if you had a fellow hired by Community Board 2, possibly that person could track what HPD has done. They were committed to doing tenant support services targeted for SoHo, NoHo, and surrounding neighborhoods. That is status is shown in progress. Begin implementation in 2022 to 2023. If you all look at your calendars, you'll see we're in 2025. And nobody's heard anything from HPD about this. Anybody I know, I live in a rent stabilized unit. You certainly haven't contacted me or anybody in my building for ongoing tenant support services. My building is filled with senior citizens who've lived here for decades and could possibly benefit from these tenant support services that all these folks promised us. There's also the PEU, proactive tenant outreach targeted for SoHo, NoHo surrounding neighborhoods. They say they're done with ongoing work. Well, nobody here knows what the heck that means because we've never heard of it. So in terms of following up, rather than following up with agencies who've told us they don't want to talk to us, don't really care, you might check in with the PEU and HPD. We've also recently learned as recently as last week that DOB, both with the SoHo NoHo rezoning and the City of Yes rezoning, have come up with all sorts of new stuff that gets them around the limitations on retail that are in the SoHo NoHo rezoning, bumped up from 10,000 to 25,000 square feet. But now, with all this code, things tied into the building code instead of zoning, where pretty much a lot of stuff you'd be surprised because it creates conflicts. This is what zoning is supposed to deal with. DOB says, yeah, no, looks good to us. Go ahead. We're also seeing that with eating and drinking establishments that are limited in SoHo and NoHo to a maximum of 8,500 square feet. But we're now seeing that, oh, well, if you're an office, you know, if you're doing like certain things, don't worry, we won't call you an eating or drinking establishment, even though you're licensing 25, 30,000 square feet. We've come up with new qualifications to get you around that. So all these things that were put in place by these very clever folks at city planning, many of whom have now left the civil service and have moved to private consultancy firms. They're the ones running all this. And I don't like to talk nasty, but we're all getting screwed by it. So this is what this has led to. I appreciate, Andrew, all the work you've done on the residential. But it wasn't just residential, because what they wanted was to create a gold zone for offices and commercial. That's where they saw the money. That is what, and along with that, we're getting luxury. And then, these clever folks that were city planning, they admitted, we're usually wrong when we make these forecasts for what will come from these. And they admit they didn't know, that they get it wrong. And I do want to just say one last thing for the folks that are newer to the neighborhood. I was on the SoHo NoHo advisory group. I've lived in the neighborhood for seems like forever. And to play this out as if people in this room are being sneaky and really putting together data to come to some end. I find that kind of strange. And the sneaky ones were the ones that put together the program and sold the program that we're going to get 3,800 units of new housing in SoHo NoHo. That was the big lie that started this. Anyway, I've said enough, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Pete. Always good to have you at a meeting. Arturo said that he could do our tech, but I think, can you make that?
Yeah, I have to be a co-host. Somebody has to make me a co-host.
Yeah, nobody's a co-host except for Valerie, so nobody could raise and lower anybody.
Yeah, can you make Arturo a co-host, please? Thank you, Mark. Okay, thanks always, Arturo, for volunteering. Okay, Eddie, are you?
Yeah.
Are you unmuted and ready? Thank you.
I think the gentleman who spoke before Pete had asked a question that was around some of the ways that I was thinking. And, I'm frustrated as everyone else at the lack of housing production we're seeing from this. But when I guess my view of looking at the data is in the last 3 years, housing production has been decreasing year over year. And all of those completions were mostly stuff that were started or planned, again, when interest rates were lower, when there was no tariffs on construction, when we had 421A in place. And, we're on pace this year for a pretty low or a pretty significant decline from the previous few years on the housing that we're seeing citywide. And, we are starting to see a couple of new sites break ground that are in the rezoning area just in the last couple of weeks. And so I guess I kind of look at this and I think, especially in the district, was among the highest land values in the city, that you probably had a lot of developers who were waiting for the uncertainty of the sort of 421A replacement to come through. We have all of these terrible macro conditions that if the city could predict, they should be on Wall Street and not in city planning. It's despite this record housing production in New York in the last 3 years, that still makes us basically the worst large city in the country at housing production. And so if we have eked up a little bit, it's still the last place guy catching up to the second to last place guy. And so, I'm frustrated that we haven't had any meaningful starts getting progressed yet. I also am looking at what's happening citywide and being like, well, this does make sense on why the city couldn't have anticipated a lot of these bad macro conditions that are preventing it here, to the degree that housing is being built. And, I don't have the full data in front of me, but a lot of it is being built in places like Long Island City where rezonings have happened recently. And so those rezonings did allow that housing to happen. So I guess I have a hard time looking at this data and seeing that this is not what the current macro conditions would have inevitably happened, and things like the legislative delay of 495X and such.
I just want to comment
Susan,
that New
then
York City
Valerie.
is not in the top 10 of lowest housing production in the country. I've looked it up. So I don't know where you get that
I
information.
mean, if you include like Detroit and Cleveland, yes, but at least in peer cities that aspire to have fast-moving economies and grow, yes, I think it's
I think that's an
pretty low.
opinion. I think that's an opinion, not a fact, but.
Okay.
Keep referencing macro conditions, and what are those to you exactly?
High interest rate environment, the interest rates nationally, the Fed only started to spike rates in 2022 after this rezoning was
We're not
passed.
talking about the federal funds rate though. Like, what are the macro conditions? Like, what specifically? You've used it twice here specifically, and I'm not seeing the connection.
I'm trying to shorthand interest rates, the recent Trump tariffs, the fact, the uncertainty around the legislative environment, around the tax break, 421A, 495X. I hate saying those because there's too many number letter pairings. But
You got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right.
But I think Andrew wanted to respond.
Who did?
Andrew.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well, I was just going to say, New York City produces more apartments than any city in the country by
because
far.
we're by far the largest one.
Well, I think if you can let Andrew talk, sorry, the back and forth is not really necessary. Sorry.
Thank you, Valerie. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Andrew.
I'm not the expert on sort of macro conditions, but I would just say the trend in housing production in New York City over the last 4 years since the rezoning has been up, not down, seemingly everywhere except SoHo, NoHo. But that's in some ways missing the big picture. There will eventually be stuff built in SoHo, NoHo under the rezoning, but it's not going to live up to the promises that we were made. It's going to include many examples of production that has no affordable housing, where the affordable housing is not integrated into the housing as we were promised. There's going to be cases where we were told housing will be built here, but instead we're getting corporate office towers. We've already seen that happen. That's really sort of the big picture here. And we are, in spite of what was promised to us, losing existing affordable housing as a consequence of the rezoning. And that's another piece of this that the city has refused to look at, account for, or take responsibility.
Yeah, we can't even get them to count the units that exist in a systematic way. And and we've been asking for that as well. Well, I think we've spent a lot of time on this, and I appreciate your presentation, Andrew. I appreciate everyone's questions. I think it's been a very good discussion. But we do have another very large topic, which is quite related. And because it's also about housing, it's about new housing, not in SoHo, NoHo, but in our community board. And so I'd like to turn to number 2 on our agenda. Andrew, you're welcome to stay, but we're going to put you down into an attendee position. I know you have some things going on at home, so if you don't stay the whole time, that's fine too.
Thank you.
So thank you, Andrew, and thank you to everyone who's participated in this discussion. And we're going to turn now to item number 2, a discussion about the conveyance of 10th Avenue between Little West 12th and Gansevoort Streets, should be capitalized, excuse me, for the Gansevoort Square development. And this is something that we have been talking about for quite a while now, and we've produced a number of resolutions on the specifics of the proposed new housing in the Gansevoort Square project area. But in our discussions, we have started to think more broadly about the whole area, that how we might ask for a better plan and more housing. And I think we should pat ourselves on the back because we fought very hard at 388 Hudson Street, and we're getting 100% affordable housing there with a Parks Department indoor sports facility and swimming pool, everything that we asked for, we got there. And we had a lot of power because we're city-owned land. There's not much government land in our community board, and we really focused on that and moved forward. And then we got this Gansevoort Square plan, which is a little more complicated in terms of ownership because of Whitney's right of first offer. I don't think it's right of first refusal. First offer, which is different from first refusal. And but in our discussions here, we've been very clear about what we'd like there. And Valerie may report, because there was a phone call I was on Friday that she was on Friday that I wasn't. No report? Okay, that's fine. But EDC, New York City EDC, in New York City CDC has been moving forward very quickly on this project. And but we should continue to press. They want to bring a conclusion to their part of it fast, but we've talked about this here, and I think we should continue to press for a number of things, and I hope that we can write a resolution out of this. And one of the things that we've said is they are not looking at a large enough geographic area. Was it here? Did Jeffrey Lefrancois come here to talk about deindustrialization? So we have the deindustrialization of the meat market really completed with the moving out of all of the meat market businesses in the Gansevoort Square smaller block, immediate block. And that means that all of the roads that had to be big for swinging trucks and passing trucks, which is, those are no longer needed. And even so far as down to Jane Street, we had sort of rerouted the whole street area into keep trucks out of the residential area and then widen from Gansevoort to 14th Street to allow the trucks room to maneuver. So in some ways, and we've mentioned that here in these meetings, in some ways from Jane Street to 14th Street, right along the side of the West Side Highway, 10th Avenue there, we have a lot of public land which is not needed for the use that has been needed for years, decades, maybe a century almost. And they also have, in addition to the city-owned land between Gansevoort and Little West 12th, we also have 3 lots that are owned by the state between Little West 12th and 13th Street, which are sort of parking lots and staging areas and a dog run. No more. There used to be a dog run there. What was it, Tracy?
Part of the parking lot.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we have land there as well. And so one of the things that I've heard mentioned here and from committee members is, why isn't the city creating a master plan that recognizes the deindustrialization and reclaims land that is no longer needed for moving goods, I guess essentially is what we should say.
It's a loading dock, wasn't it?
So it's like a service road in a way.
Yeah.
I would call
There's a
it.
very wide service road in addition to that loading dock area. And to get into that master plan, the block between Little West 12th and 13th Street, which is owned by the state. Now, the state is working on the 9W, what they call it, the I don't know, reconstruction. It's 25 years since they redid West Street, 9W, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
They call it 9W at the state level. It's 25 years and they have to do some refreshing, and they want those parking lots and for staging area, but that doesn't mean that we can't start to plan what's going to go there when they don't need it as a staging area anymore. So I think it's a poor response that, we just have to keep this area sort of, I don't know, on ice. Frederica.
Yeah, I know that we've incorporated the annexing of that little stub area into other resolutions, and that's fallen on deaf ears. I'm sure that the Whitney Museum would say that they need, that they're going to bring in their art installations through that, in that area, and that they need the wide turning radius for their trucks that are going to come in and out, supplying the museum. If you're suggesting that we, a little belatedly, I think, suggest that they do a master plan there, I'd go along with that. But if we just write a resolution about including that part of 9W, I think that's
Not
sealed on that.
The Whitney is already asking for a passageway, not a turning radius, a passageway out onto 9W. That's
anything that comes in has to get out.
We've discussed all the elements of this extensively. We just
What's
haven't
new
put
then?
it together in a comprehensive resolution with our ask. If you look at all these piecemeal things, and as a consequence of not having a comprehensive resolution, it's very difficult to explain what it is that our board has. Number one is the feeling of complete dissatisfaction, right? That a better plan could be produced here. And the consequence of this, of what we see now being built, eliminates the opportunity of better utilizing the land in this whole western end section of the meatpacking district. Because if you, a couple weekends ago, I was going up West Street, and you look at our engagement of our community board with West Street, and you have every block and every street goes right up to West Street, and you have all the land is well used. You get up to Horatio, Jane Street, and then you have, that's blocked. And that was blocked at a request of the residents to prevent trucks from coming in and out of the community. And that's a part of what Jeffrey was talking about, the deindustrialization. When he came and presented to us on that concept and that plan, it was before this was announced. And what they had put together didn't include the opportunity that's now before us. And if you go up West Street and you pass Horatio, you suddenly have the end of 10th Avenue. You have a short 3 or 4 foot, concrete wall, a chain link fence against it that goes up. And there's no revisioning of the space to pull it all out to West Street so that you can properly utilize what's city and state owned land.
Mhm.
And that's what we discussed over.
So we should be on the record.
And we need a comprehensive, I think, resolution that explains this, because it seems that development of the site right in the middle precludes any other good development, because you suddenly are putting in a huge residential building and
Scraps left
right.
over.
It doesn't seem, and everybody is not, we don't know all the mechanics of the discussions, but it seems that a better outcome could be had here, and it's not too late.
So
that's pretty much, and the fact that you have nobody's discounting the Whitney or access. I mean, there's many ways to do that. You go up to the Javits Center, they load and unload the Javits Center all the time, and there's a way to allow, even in front of the Whitney, if you look at it, if that was kept with open space, a multi-purpose driveway that you could back up an 18-wheeler on to access, from West Street. That's not.
And it's not an every day, every morning, 2 times a day, like it would be with meatpacking.
So the meatpacking bid put together the report that I believe you're talking about, that Jeffrey came to talk about, was the Western Gateway report.
I think that's what it was.
Yes.
And it was before.
And it might be that in there, they had some kind of vision for that area.
No, they didn't.
They were keeping that area, they were tightening up the lower area of it by where it links on to 10th Avenue. They were keeping it wide there because there was no plan to do anything different and had to stay that way. So that wasn't part of their plan, other than adding a bike lane, I think, on there or something like that, and on 14th Street.
And what you raised about the staging area right? That's a very valid concern, but that doesn't preclude a better look at this
For the
area.
areas north of there.
And also, we had discussed when we had the other presentation on the building on Little West 12th Street.
Yes.
That we needed a better, and this is another example of a better imagining of the possible uses. And shouldn't, this small area has to be rezoned. So why aren't we having a comprehensive plan that takes that into account, as well as maybe an opportunity for what I think is a development site for the hotel. I don't know what that's a private owner, but what they're interested in doing, just south of 14th Street, but that whole area could have a much better outcome, but it relies on the conveyance of the city and state owned. I guess it's mostly state owned land. But if you go up the engagement, and one of the things that's very different is north of 14th Street is a very different engagement with West Street and everything that's happening than you have south. And the engagement of pulling out all the streets to West Street in our community is a wonderful connection to the waterfront, to Hudson River Park, and to not take advantage of that opportunity here.
Well, that would be a resolution that broke new ground. That would be good.
Yeah, because I'm from the last resolution we had on this, we explicitly did call out to Governor Hochul and to the city and state about incorporating 10th Avenue into the project. So I just want to make sure we are doing something net new here and not just repeating something that we already wrote in a resolution.
Arturo, the problem is that resolution doesn't say this in a way that's clean. It's all sort of subset addressing other issues. And we've just passed as a board top priority is the conveyance of this. And so we need to put something together to better convey the reasons for that and how it connects into what all this extensive discussion that the board's already had.
Well, we're really talking about in this right now, I'm in my mind talking from Jane to 13th Street. Previous one was more just Gansevoort to Little West 12th. So that's what I want to be sure.
By being comprehensive, right?
Yeah.
And going into more detail than that, if I recall, that resolution was.
Well, we were talking about other things. That was part of another issue we were addressing. Anita had her hand up.
Yeah, I think clearly design that takes into account the adjacent neighborhood, be it, this seems like a very isolated development when it's a very extremely complex intersection of major roads and streets and very little, I might add, affordable housing. And this might be an opportunity where not only could we improve the streetscape and the experience of being in this area, which is huge. This is a very big area. It's almost impossible to find your way over to the water because of all the cars. I mean, there's a lot of experiences that could be benefit from a proper master plan, an overall view, and not just the parameters of this one big site.
Okay.
And Katie, you brought up something to me, which I don't think is well appreciated, that there is no infrastructure in this area to support the development and to really create a master plan to bring in, for example, sewers, into this area is incredibly important because this is an area that had a very different use and never had any type of volume of use in the way that residential requires. And in fact, I know from just as a side note from speaking to some of the property owners in this area that they've had massive sewer issues and backflowing into basements, et cetera, stuff like that, and which was never addressed, over the years. And that really requires a comprehensive approach, which in order to get this, you can't just build a tall residential building without the infrastructure that's necessary. So that should be part of a comprehensive planning that goes into this area.
I thank you for remembering that, I live on a deindustrialized block between Washington and West, which most of them are, and there is no public sewer on our street. The sewer runs underneath our buildings and connects out to West Street. And, we just had the anniversary of Sandy, and the day before the anniversary of Sandy this year, we had about 6 or 7 buildings affected with flooding and sewer backups from that huge rainstorm that came at high tide. Was it the 29th or the 30th? I can't remember. So, it's an ongoing, it's ongoing.
They never fix themselves, those damn problems.
No, they really require a lot of work. And when you talk to the DEP people, they'll come around and they'll say, oh, we just found a Civil War era sewer that's not on any map, and we had to fix, there's all kinds of surprises underneath, and so I put that in.
So in a way, time is of the essence about this, right?
Always, we're always under the gun for
Did you give you the go-ahead to write something without our seeing it, or did you have in mind that you would bring it to the next meeting?
No, we're going to do it. We're going to do it this month, and I have the notes. Please give me more bullets.
Well,
Pete, I think Pete wants to make a comment.
Well, we'll let him in a minute. Carter.
It's also demapping.
Right.
It's not conveyance necessarily to this project. It's demapping these streets and better utilizing that space, for development purposes. And look, right now we just need to make that as our point, not the all the little details. But really, I'm just looking at Google Earth, view right now of this area, and it's just so much space that will not be used again, and to not include it in some sort of a plan or whatever it is. It's just it's
Poor planning is what it is. Yeah.
And also the other issue is, I think that there's been we've heard, not directly resulting of this, but the traffic issues in this area are significant. And by opening up the grid to West Street, you really you ease a lot of issues over here by allowing free flow movement that I think will alleviate some of those other
and it also might
issues.
Decrease traffic pedestrian conflict, which it's tough there in terms of even pedestrians knowing where to go because things are coming at them. So maybe
in a way, the hinge is the meat packers moving out. Right, and that affects that whole strip, and that's why.
It's right in the middle.
Right.
And if you develop that, you end up losing the opportunity to really connect all the pieces.
Yeah, and they're gone. They're gone.
They're gone.
And that site also, if it were fully extended across 10th Avenue by combining some of this and some different options, right, would be a much better use of that very large chunk of space. And but I think there was a lot of concern from some people of interrupting the process that's already in place, but the consequence of not doing it is losing. It's cliche to say, but it's like a one-time opportunity to really change the streetscape in this part of our community.
We're late to the game, but it's still doing.
Well, it was pushed through to satisfy.
No, but it took us a while to realize that there was that.
Well, I think that's a very good point. They met 2 years in secret, private. They were, and we weren't at part of that conversation, and we now had time to think about it more deeply.
Yeah, and I would really try to focus the conversation less on whatever the speculation is and what's going to be in this resolution. So that way it's not gonna turn into like an hour and a half discussion at full board, because it's being.
We've already had the discussion.
We also don't want the rest to be a grievance, you know?
No, and I don't think so, but
That's a good suggestion.
if someone asks us, why are you only coming to us now? We have to say, well, we haven't had as much time to think about it as other people. And when we started thinking about it, we wanted to go deeper. I think you have to be positive. I agree, Valerie, but I think you have to be honest. You know, now we've been thinking about it. My God, look at this.
It's another example of no dialogue.
Yeah.
We have discussed it, and the point is, it's just putting it together in a comprehensive resolution that is clear what it is that we're asking, or what it is we'd like to see. Because I think that if we don't clearly communicate that to our elected officials, to all the various administrations, I think that they're not understanding the opportunity that's being lost here by not in a slightly different.
Well, and
So they came to, which we had tons of meaningless input. Here they came to us when it was all figured out and we had no input. And that's why we're in this position now.
Exactly.
And is this viable, like, because it is Wednesday and full board is next Thursday, is this viable enough to be ready to be voted on?
It doesn't have to be long.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone is,
Right, it doesn't
because
have
it
to be
is,
long.
and
Right.
that the committee will have an opportunity to view it.
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't have to go back to the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Yeah, are we,
And then Matthew.
are we asking, so, because I'm still not really sure what we're asking for. Are we asking for a demapping? Or are we asking for a master plan? Because with the demapping, like removing it as a usable street, that seems a little bit early without doing or considering like a traffic analysis of like, what is the impact of demapping the street completely? Not that I'm opposed to it, but it would be good to know, hey, what are we advocating for? And what is the impact going to be on traffic flow in that area?
Well, a master plan would take into account traffic.
Yes.
Okay, so that covers that.
But I think that's a minority view, because I think everybody knows 10th Avenue isn't used.
It's not used.
It's not used, period. And that's what we keep hearing over and over.
What do you mean by minority view?
Meaning that you need some study of the use of 10th Avenue. I mean, that's already, even the Meatpacking Association came to us and said none of this is being used, and they wanted to change it into pedestrian space.
Are you saying,
It's not a necessary step, because the deindustrialization of the area is what took away the whole purpose of 10th Avenue, which is the swing area for all the trucks to come in and out, all the large 18-wheelers. And so that's just
Can you
gone.
just clear up that you're saying that as opposed to the majority of people know that 10th Avenue is not used? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's, you know.
Yeah, and I don't think I agree with that assessment. I don't know for a fact that, you know, all of a sudden cars are not using it and cars would not have any impact by this being demapped.
Who do you think?
But we can disagree. We can disagree on that.
Let me just ask you one thing, just with the traffic flow there, exactly which cars do you think are using 10th Avenue? Because
I mean,
they're
there's certainly cars going down Gansevoort, right?
but that's not the area we're talking about. We're not talking about the
But
Gansevoort area that goes on.
they can turn from Gansevoort onto 10th Avenue. So I'm assuming
They
that
could
some of
turn
them
onto
do.
West Street. That's the whole point, is to remove it so that they all engage on West Street, like they do all the way up and down
Yeah, I don't
the
think it's
western
right.
side of our community board.
I think you're asking a question because you don't know, right?
And
You don't
and
have
the
evidence, maybe?
the master plan would answer those questions.
Right, which I support. I support a master plan, just to be clear.
Yes,
But I'm just
yeah.
saying, if we jump to demapping without knowing the impact of traffic flow, that seems a little.
Well, we can always
Uninformed.
say,
Well, that
we
can be
support
part of it,
mapping,
process.
master plan supports it. You know,
We definitely need traffic engineers to sign off on it.
yeah, when-
It wouldn't be
The board's
done.
already talked about this extensively, of pulling out all these streets. That's part of the deindustrialization. I mean, we've all of our
And
communities have heard this. This
Change
is
of
like,
use.
yeah, it's a change of
And I-
use has eliminated the need for the way that this whole circular movement within the meatpacking district occurred. And the last remaining use was the meatpacker site. And now that that's gone, and that's part of the whole reason that they had to demap part of this was the loading dock area, which is where the trucks backed up into. So the whole need for that movement is gone. And that's was never envisioned because nobody thought that the meat packers would leave so quickly. And they ended up all of a sudden meeting in secret because they knew they didn't want to be there anymore because there's no infrastructure. So they wanted out as fast as they could.
Valerie and then Matthew.
So just so I'm clear, right, we're advocating to remove somewhere where cars would go, right? Like that's right. We're trying to advocate to look at the potential of removing a place where cars would go, right?
Cars don't go.
Trucks.
Well, trucks or whatnot, where cars are not going, but the idea to have so that it's more the ability to be pedestrianized or to increase the amount of housing, right? So and that sounds reasonable, right? That I think a lot of people on all sides of this issue could come together about, right? Am
I think so.
Okay, I'm just trying to put that together because it's maybe not as clear for me.
I would call it in the resolution.
Matthew's next.
I know one sentence.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We can close this out.
I would call it the potential for affordable housing or potential for housing. And particular
housing.
Affordable housing. I don't think we should.
No, I wouldn't say affordable. Let's say affordable housing.
John, just the studies that have to be done. Sorry.
Okay.
Going back to what you're saying about 9W possibly being an obstacle here because they want to use that area for staging. I was at one of the early meetings for the 9W study, and there was a big emphasis on connectivity between the neighborhoods and the park. And that was like a recurring theme that everyone brought up. So is there, that this would be a state action for the conveyance? Is there an opportunity to kind of maybe advocate for this to be incorporated into any plan that enhances the connectivity?
I like that word.
The park and these neighborhoods by including the demapping and the conveyance of it.
Are you going to the meeting next week, Matthew?
Oh, is there another one? Wait,
There's an envisioning meeting, but it's in person, so.
for 9W?
It's 9A. We can just clear that up.
Sorry.
Record, it's 9A.
New Jersey.
Yeah, I was gonna confuse. Not Route 9A, the West Side Highway.
Yeah. Between neighborhoods and park. Okay, yes, thank you. Bo, is your hand up?
No. I'm just saying it's 9A. I just.
Yes, thank you. You know, I'm just thinking of having.
It's the West Side Highway as far as I'm concerned, but that's a whole.
Miller Highway.
I know, it has,
Showing your age.
and then Joe DiMaggio up there, and, you know,
Oh, right.
there's a million names. Okay, so I think I know what the whereases are, and what are the TBRs though?
And just Pete still hasn't had a chance to comment.
Oh, thanks for reminding. Yes, well, okay, yes, it is a public hearing, so yes, yes, please, Pete. And Arturo, can you help him speak?
Yeah, he has the ability to talk.
Hi, Pete, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So there might be a constraint on that stretch of 10th Avenue. And that is the infamous Spectra gas pipeline that went in 2013 that arrives on 10th Avenue at Gansevoort Street and runs up 10th Avenue along the rear butt of the Whitney and the meatpacking building. So I would suggest you look into DEP or DCP, whatever agency that is. There's definitely a big gas pipeline right there. Whether or not it's on that space and interferes is not known.
Yeah.
I would leave that out, actually.
Yeah,
Thank you, Pete.
Just to go back, we've asked the city and state as part of the resiliency to map all whatever's underground on West Street, because there's a lot of infrastructure there. But I think that that's just what it is, and any project has to work around that. But they haven't been interested in at least sharing that they've done that, because there's a lot of stuff under there. And the reason that we had discussed it is because of any type of a wall or any type of, whatever resiliency method that they might use. It's important to know what's under there, but there's so much fill that's in there historically and all these industrial uses. It's sort of a little unclear if everything's all been put together on one.
It's a muddle under there, because I've looked at the different blocks going up over the years as different variances were applied for. And, there were gas stations, there's a lot of stuff under there, but no matter what happens, they're going to have to do some of that.
But I don't think we're micromanaging the process. What we're trying to say is here's a better plan for our city and how can this be done? And, it's interesting when I had, lived across from CB3, they had a project that was on the books for many decades, but the consequence of that project was a great project that came out. And that's the Christie Avalon development where Whole Foods is, but there's all this housing to the north and south. And even though it took a long time to develop, and that was because of economic conditions, they couldn't find somebody to do it, it was built. And it's a really great development that came out with affordable housing and everything else. But that's because, a plan was put in place. And, this is the same type of situation where I think that, the long view is very important.
Oh, I like that, the long view.
Nice.
It's always good to have.
That's fine.
Long view. Exactly. Now, it is a public hearing, and we've heard from Pete Davies. Are there any other people who would like to speak on this topic? Okay, I'm sorry, Matthew, you're going to have to move back because we don't have a lot of speakers, but they're so important.
Elias Schultz, thank you for putting up with me once again. And I did not mean to cast any aspersions about the committee's great work during my last comment, so apologies for that.
Thank you.
So I'm a rent stabilized tenant. I live on 14th between 8th and 9th. So I'm actually 3 blocks away from the site. I bike through there every day to get to work, specifically west on Gansevoort over that little nub of 10th. And I strongly support demapping because there are never any cars on it. That means that when there are cars on it, they go really dangerously fast. And it makes the intersection much more complex than it needs to be, frankly, especially when you're entering westward 2 blocks north. And I'm aware it would only be between Gansevoort and Little West 12th, but that would make a big difference. My head really has to be going like every direction when I bike around there. It's quite dangerous. And I also support as many new neighbors as possible, and just anything that can be done to speed up the development process and get as many housing units there as possible at all income levels. If demapping 10th allows for that, then it's very exciting. I think a great opportunity for street safety. And also, I guess I also have a question. I was at part of the full board meeting last time, and there was discussion of this, after which I had to leave. So my question is has the demapping of 10th already been voted on by the full board, or is that something that's still in the works?
But how much of 10th?
That was part of it has in the sense that it's
Priority.
incorporated into resolutions.
Right, in January,
Yeah,
Thank you.
but we're going to emphasize it.
But how much?
Well, I think he was asking about the district needs priority request, no, the budget request?
Yeah, he was, but it has been voted on. It was part of our January resolution on this, and then we voted to have it as one of our top 3 district needs. So that's what was voted on, so.
Yeah. Okay, Bo has a question.
No, I'm just saying, how much of 10th Avenue are we talking about demapping?
From Gansevoort to 13th Street.
Well,
I would actually say that it should be to 14th Street.
Okay.
Gansevoort to 14th Street.
The reason for that is that I think this opportunity is because it widens up for, a different outcome on the stretch.
14th,
at least
13th.
it should be looked at that way. I mean.
Yeah. And it would probably, include some pedestrianization area for the access to that one building that is there. But I think that should be part of a comprehensive.
But we're also talking about the Jane Horatio loop.
Right, that's right.
So some of our thinking goes down as far as Jane Street.
Which at this point.
And they still call that West Street. Who knew?
Which at this point may be an improvement for down there.
Yeah. So I'm going to say from Jane to 14th Street then is the area that we would, you know, like to.
And a part of that is
Recommend.
pulling out, right, the street grid.
A lot,
to West
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah. I do go back and look at our recording when I'm writing, but but still, I believe in hand-eye coordination, that it puts it deeper in your brain or better in your brain. So I also write it, but I'm assuring you that when I write, I also look at the recording so that I don't miss any detail.
So you have to move to.
Is there any more discussion? Yes, Asher, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
back to the hot seat.
Similarly, very supportive of demapping 10th. And I would just say that my impression is that the Mark Levine, the current Manhattan Borough President, soon to be comptroller, has expressed that the state is somewhat interested in expanding bike lanes onto the West Side Highway 9A, whatever you want to call it. So I think to the extent that you're thinking about the broader streetscape around there, worth considering how that might be relevant.
I believe that our Traffic and Transportation Committee has a resolution in support of that idea. So
Of demapping 10th?
no, of putting a bike lane onto West Street because the
It's too crowded on
the
the.
bikeway is the bikeway next to the Esplanade is too crowded right now.
We've asked in various manners for that since 2020 at the beginning of COVID for various.
And also maybe putting a bus route on West Street so that you can go up and down and from point to point in the park more easily. So.
But does the traffic committee have to eliminate that 10th Avenue?
No,
Because that's very, that's very trafficy there.
Their proposal is.
Where is it traffic?
When you're coming up the West Side Highway 9A, there's an exit to 10th Avenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's getting fixed.
that's at 14th
That's at
Street.
14th
That's going
Street.
north.
And that's going north.
Right.
That
That's
should, I've been told that light should be, or they have some plan on that should be fixed sometime, because everybody's aware that does not work.
So, and a lot of this is left over from when it was elevated.
Oh, yeah,
area,
sure.
And also the slow expansion of landfill, et cetera, and just I was looking at some old historic pictures from the 30s, the 20s, and you can see all this just open areas from where they're unloading of, ships and just moving stuff. And so it's a completely different environment, and it's one of the few undeveloped areas left from its past use.
Well, and it's land, very valuable, New York City land. And especially if it could be something for the communities surrounding, for the tourists. I mean, this is a hugely popular area, and the city would make a lot of money.
And I also think that one of the things that we should say is that this process should include the local stakeholders, meaning the buildings, because there's a lot of uses here. For example, the hotel is already there, obviously the Whitney, but it's like the community, there's a lot of engagement that's required to get this through to in an end result in a good way. So I think that that's an important part, because I think this is beneficial for everybody.
It might also be very beneficial for the resiliency plan.
Oh, definitely.
That takes square feet to do in a physical or even in a mechanical way. So there's at least some land to work with.
And that's a great point, because I think that the Whitney had to redesign as a consequence of Sandy to incorporate resiliency.
And they have to run out with some panels and put them all in, apparently.
And
maybe better designed.
And after Sandy, right in the area that we're talking about, more specifically for the meatpacker site, all those trucks, you could see the water line marks on the size of all the trucks and where they got flooded up, they left the trucks there.
That's why they left.
Well, it's pretty dangerous. Well, I mean, one of the things, 25 years ago when they were planning, or more than that now, really, when they were planning 9A, there was a plan to put a holding tank under the highway to hold the water back. You only need about 20 minutes, and I know from bitter experience, when the tide's high. So one of the things that I, try to say to these new planners is, could we put the holding tanks under the highway?
You mean like a catch basin?
Exactly.
Yeah, big
huge
ones, big ones, that would hold enough water. I mean, after Sandy, you could walk around the neighborhood and you'd see these, there were a couple of open construction sites and they were filled. But they took the water, it didn't go into the neighboring buildings, but we could use that.
It all went into your building.
And that has to be designed from the ground up.
Yes.
You
So they're
can't
doing things.
come back later and fix that.
Be better than a wall, that wall that they showed us.
It's a combination of things. I think it's really it can be very innovative and it should be a little bit of everything. I don't think it's one solution because it's too big a problem.
Thank you. I'm putting that as one of our points. So there's no more commentary from the public. There's no more commentary from the committee. Arturo, are you okay over there?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for
Okay,
sharing.
so are we going to, can we vote?
Are we in business session?
So if you're not, then we'll close the public hearing, so there's no more comment. We're in business session. We've done a lot of the work. So I see, to be resolved, create a master plan, expand the space. We have a lot of bullets for the whereas. In the master plan should expand this
area coverage.
I think that's leading the witness. I think that put that in the whereases, that, that this is a possibility, and be very clear about what the boundaries are of the area that you're talking about. And then say, we want a master plan of this area that takes into the traffic, the infrastructure, the other things in your notes.
Yeah.
But you can, don't be afraid to keep it simple.
Agreed.
I'm just thinking. Okay. Yes, and the area is from Jane Street north to 14th Street. And what do you say? Washington?
Yes, from Washington Street to west.
To
9A or West Street.
To West Street 9A, okay.
There might be some other ways to refer to it, but that's the parcels that we're talking about, yeah. Because
Including 10th Avenue. I mean, I don't know what.
Well, Washington Street to west includes.
I just want to be, I don't want them.
Leave it like that because then you're.
Okay, that's
chopping it up. It's easier.
Okay.
No, it includes 10.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. It's the eastern boundary is not Washington Street and all the blocks. And not, it's only Washington Street from Gansevoort to Little West 12th, and it's halfway.
It's Washington Street from Jane.
You think so?
Yeah, that's Washington goes all the way down, so
And
it's
it goes-
Washington
and it
Street,
goes
but
all the way to
where
14th
it's not,
Street.
and it's West Street.
Okay, so we'll include the existing building.
10th Avenue at Gansevoort or Horatio.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
just want to be
the
clear.
area that we're talking about over time has changed the designation for what it's called, but I think there's some, we can identify it, but some of that's a little
in a
weird
map.
because some of it's still actually West Street. Like that park is actually on a part of what is technically West Street. between Jane and Horatio.
Right.
So
Yes.
It's a weird, it's weird how that was all done.
Wasn't there another way of describing it, like
Well, it used to
the
be.
undeveloped?
What you
No,
could
like a
say
map.
is 9A, because when that little bit of West Street, looking at the map right now, doesn't say 9A between Jane and Horatio. When you get out to the 9A, it says West Street 9A. So if you just refer to 9A,
You're not
that,
West Street.
that incorporates that little
do not West Street.
9A. I
Just use 9A.
think.
Why not use both? And then
Because to Carter's point, you don't want it to stop at West Street here.
So I'm looking at some of the historic
You
maps.
want it to go all the way over.
And it actually going down a little West 12.
Yeah.
Is
11th
here.
Avenue.
Here's
on
9A.
West
Yeah,
Street.
yeah.
There's some weird things that go on.
Yeah. That's good. I'm glad I asked that question.
I think 9A.
Okay, we're good. You'll comment?
Yeah.
Are we going to vote? Happy to vote. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, any nays? Any abstentions or recusals? I'm going to mark it unanimous.
Okay. I have a little new business.
Oh, I have an announcement. Yes, go ahead, you're first.
Thank you. A lot of people who were at the table back in, I think it was 2020, Aurora Capital came to us when they were rezoning Gansevoort. And at the time, we got 2 community benefits, one on Gansevoort and one on Weehawken and West 10th and Christopher Street. And the arrangement was that within 3 years of the commitment letter, they would make the space available. And that space has been available for a while. And it's time that we activated our option and get David Gruber, if he's still the chair of it, I don't know. I don't know if he's on the call now. But we're entitled to that space, and Aurora it's available. Aurora is waiting for the tenant. So
when did the 3-year,
And that space could
happen?
move, so, because that space is supposed to move when they developed a new site
Right.
around the corner.
Whatever it
So
is,
is there any movement
they're ready.
on that?
They're ready.
They're ready for us to
Right.
initiate finding the.
Where commitment letter was signed on April 20th, or April 22nd, so that would have been 2023. And I have talked about this with, I think Susan, I wrote to you about it, Valerie, I talked to Eugene about it. There's no reason that we can't, it's on us now to make it happen. I have the letter here if you want a copy with the agreement.
Sure, I'd love a copy of that letter. I haven't seen it.
There you go.
I'll just take a picture of it. Thanks.
And we got this space because originally they were gonna put the community benefit space on the 4th floor, and then they moved it to the basement. And as a consequence, we said that.
But there's nothing, we don't have to do any resolutions.
And then the other space was optioned out to Greenwich House for a dollar sum, a significant dollar sum that was.
Good memory.
on the other space. And the reason that I think that this wasn't really pursued too much is because it's not a free space. It's a 50%, and the market value in the end of Weehawken Street was really indeterminate at that time and through COVID and coming out of COVID. So.
Well, and pre-development because it's.
So what's the mechanism for actually not letting this drop now?
Yeah, I'll discuss it with Valerie.
With
Valerie.
Yeah, great.
I was just going to say, Mark sent out a notice a reminder that the Board of Standards and Appeals is hearing 51, 55, Little West 12, the Titanic building. They have submitted papers to the BSA, which are not substantively different from the ones that we responded to. They've made some tweaks, but they didn't respond to our criticisms, requests, suggestions. So I'm thinking that, Eugene and or I should testify by Zoom at the hearing when it comes.
On behalf of the board, yes.
With the board's resolution, to read the resolution, and I think it's important that we do that. So I just want to let you know that I don't know our schedules, we'll figure out the schedule. But we have a resolution, we're very strong, and I think
it's important.
we want to be there for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other new business? If not, I will say that we're adjourning at 8:32. That's not too bad. A meeting.
Good.
And we will see each other next week, Tuesday and Thursday, but you'll be hearing from me before then.
You'll send something around
Thank you,
before then?
everyone.
Thank you.